a conflagration of ideas, goals, and aspirations. This is something we all know because we practice this every day in our organizations or in our personal lives. The philosopher, Greek philosopher Heraclitus, said it so well when he said, "Change is the only constant in life." How true that has been this year, especially with COVID. We have been able to change and manage that in many different ways. Take, for instance, our meeting today on Toastmasters. We're used to meeting face to face, but here we are on this unique platform. Our work environment with a work from home structure, the way we interact with each other as individuals, no longer do we hug or kiss each other on the cheek, but now we're used to the elbow touch and the good old fist bump. That is the change we look at today. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, this month, China embarked and completed its 14th five-year plan. China has these five-year plans that it has been using since 1953, when then the president, Mao Zedong, worked to move the country from poverty and communism to industrialization and socialism. This has been the guiding light throughout these 14 years, throughout all these years, to ensure that there is some sort of strategy and plan to manage the change they want to see within the country. This year's plan is known as the Double Dynamic Development Plan, in which it is based on technology and innovation to move the country into sustainable energy usage and as well as increased consumption and GDP. As I pondered this and looked at this, something came to mind and reignited me in the fire in an organization I am a member of. I am a member of the Radio Society of Kenya. And no, that is not radio as in DJ, it is radio as in walkie-talkies. The organization was started in 1933 and we are now 87 years old. We have been able to serve the country in many different ways, from supporting the Safari Rally, emergency actions like the strategies of trains and otherwise, and other such things around the country. And even in the emergency when settlers used the radios to communicate with each other when the Mau Mau came and attacked them in the farms. But that being said, there are three things that we have noticed we need to change to remain viable and important in this time and age. It is the demographic of our club, the technology we use, and our public face. Let us look at those as we figured out how, as an organization, we looked at and have developed a plan to manage the change to transition us into the 21st century of more relevance. When we look at the demographic, I hinted as to who were the people who had the radios then, and that pretty much remained the dynamic. So it is a much older group of members who inhabit the club right now. So there is a chance of us diminishing in terms of number and popularity. Our public face is hardly being seen because we don't interact with the Safari Rally, the Scouts, or other such events in this time and age. So our relevance on the public face is also diminishing. For emergency situations, there is nothing that beats the analog radio signal. And that remains a fact throughout the world. If you look at your disaster movies, you'll always find somebody on a radio saying, "Do you hear me over, over?" That will always remain the same because the radio frequency, you can transmit it from your own station and do not need a secondary source of transmission such as digital. However, it is this very digital platform that creates relevance in what we do. And it is one that we have not done. So we have to migrate to these areas. Therefore, what are we doing? What is our management plan? We have developed this over the year, and in our annual general meeting in January, we hope to reveal that we have made much change in the way we work. Therefore, to address the demographic, we encourage young people to join the group, to join the club, and put them into leadership positions in the different committees, for instance, the repeater committee, the examination committee, and others, so they can guide and become part of the organization. On the public face, we have now embraced Twitter, Facebook, and are developing a brand spanking new website that will allow us also to communicate and have a public face in what we do. Granted, COVID-19 held back some of our activities when we would have been physically more involved, for instance, in the marathon, in the upcoming Safari Rally, which will be happening next year as well, God willing, and other such activities. And finally, embracing the digital technology, an expensive venture, but one which we know we have to do to incorporate the new technologies that will allow us to use things as the Raspberry Pi for those geeks and technologists among us, or the internet or mobile devices to allow us to communicate with each other. We have embraced these and are working towards them, but it has not been an easy path. There have been arguments, debates. Is this relevant? What does it mean to my old equipment? Will it be a waste of equipment and I've invested so much money into it? Those have come, but there has been a general consensus that we have to and need to make this change to be able to survive into the next century. But ladies and gentlemen, remember, the organization is a structure. Within it are individuals, us, and each of us have had to have our own change and manage that change within ourselves to be able to migrate the organization through it. Coincidentally, the fact that I'm delivering this speech about 45 days before the new year is important, and I would like us to think about that. When we start the new year, we have New Year's resolutions, and we want to keep some things and we want to dispose of some things. It gives us the opportunity to change. And I would suggest we start writing our goals now and figure out how will we manage this change we want to manifest in our lives in 2021. Let us not fade out into obscurity because of a lack of planning, but be very determined and focused about it. Let us look at what we need to do. Let us develop a template to measure how we will do that change. And let us say, in next year, 2021, what change do we want to do? The Radio Society of Kenya is embracing that. And we are looking towards changing and becoming more relevant in the future. And I hope you are too, because remember, a people without a vision perish. I hope your vision is driving you. Mr. Toastmaster.
So Gitonga took 7 minutes and 6 seconds to deliver his speech. So he was within the time, kept time well. So the things I felt he excelled at, you clearly introduced us to the subject of your speech and with a quote which says, change is the only constant in life. And I think this is a good quote, especially considering that your speech was to focus on managing change. So that was a good introduction. Secondly, you continued working us on this perspective of change management when you told us about the Chinese development plans, where you mentioned the most recent one is the Double Dynamic Development Plan. So I like that you're still working us towards your goal or towards your plan. I like that. And then you clearly introduced us to the organization where you wish to implement changes, which was the Radio Society of Kenya. So it was very clear what it is you wanted to speak about. And you also told us about the 3 areas that you want to implement changes. Yes, you mentioned the demographic. And the good thing with that is you also had a call to action within the body of your speech, where you also mentioned, you invited us, you told us we are 45 days away from the new year. So as people think about the new year, it was a call to action for people to be interested in joining the organization. Then you also mentioned about what you'll be doing the public face, so embracing Twitter and also the website. So an area I would feel you may want to work on, especially specifically for this speech, I would encourage you to work more on vocal variety. Why I say specifically for this speech is because the speech was focusing on the Radio Society of Kenya. And when we think of radio, we think a lot of music and sounds. So there's an expectation to hear maybe some aspects of your vocal variety. So that would be a thing I think I would challenge you to work on. Otherwise, I think it was a well-delivered speech, and I look forward to listening to your next speech.